What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Twisted Life of TV. I am Poetry. You are here for our quick, non-spoiler review of the Michael movie. And I wanted to touch on this because there's so much controversy about the production of the movie, the fact that family members weren't involved, the rapid pace at which they went through his life, and the exclusion of some of his key moments of his career. So I wanted to touch on that myself. Let me first start off by saying I will be going to see this movie again. And I will be having my off the wall afro back on again for the second time. Okay? Child, let me tell you, I enjoyed this movie. There were a couple things that I didn't enjoy, and I'll tell you that briefly, and then I'll get into what I did like without trying to spoil the movie. I did not like the prosthetic noses. They were a lot larger than what I remember Michael Jackson to have. However, I understand why they did make it a focal point in the movie. It can help tell some of the story. I also didn't like the crowd that I was with. That's probably the only other thing I didn't like about this movie. The crowd that I was with. The 11:45 a.m. theater goers at the Altamont Springs Theater on Sunday, April 26th. Y'all was booty as hell. Ain't no doggone way we could sit through a movie about Michael Jackson with all the great songs that was played. They played a large catalog of his music, and everybody was sitting there. I saw a couple head bods like that. Me, my daughter, and the 5 people next to us, we all in the back. We was getting it, okay? When Thriller came on, they should have lost their damn minds. Okay, when Who's Bad came on, they should have lost their minds. When he did Human Nature, they should have lost their motherfucking minds. But everybody sat in that theater like they didn't know what to do with themselves. You guys were not Michael Jackson fans. Okay? There's not too much else I did not like about this movie. True, Janet Jackson was not part of the movie. She didn't want to be a part of it. She thought it was disrespectful of her brothers to even make the movie. She thought that she's the only person in the family who truly knows who Michael is, his best friend, and that they were exploiting his name. That's the reason why she didn't want to sign off on the movie. His kids, who gives a fuck? Well, his family gives a fuck about them, but I truly don't, because I don't even believe that his kids, other than the fact that he took ownership of them. Okay, they didn't sign off on the movie either. Rebe, I was surprised that Rebe wasn't there. She wasn't part of the movie either. And one of the things that I did like about this movie, even though they were missing 2 key family members, they didn't harp on it, and they didn't try to force their way around their absence. The show just went on, and that was one of the things that Joe Jackson instilled in these kids. The show must go on, and that's what the fuck they did with this movie. The show went on without Janet, without Rebe. Who else was missing? Diana Ross, I'm not sure what affiliation she had, but she was such a big, major part of his life. They didn't talk about her at all. Didn't even breathe her name. Who else was it? Diana Ross, Paul McCartney. He was one of the catalysts. He helped catapult Michael Jackson's career by Michael Jackson's choice. And I'll explain that in a minute. That didn't really... He wasn't in the movie at all either. So any music that he had with him wasn't talked about. Say, and The Girl Is Mine, We Are the World wasn't there. Who else wasn't in this movie? I think it was somebody else that was in. Macaulay Culkin was a big part of Michael Jackson's life. They didn't show anything of him. They didn't show Elizabeth Taylor. But then again, a lot of those were later on in the years. They did stop this movie at 1988. And at the end, it does say his story continues, which means there very well could be a part 2. I, for one, am not upset that they stopped this movie in 1988. One of the things I was telling my daughter during the movie is that, which they touched on, his age. They always focused on that he was a lot younger. They had him in 1971 at age 10. Michael Jackson was born the same year as my mama. She was born in 1956. So they were trying to make him 10 years, 5 years younger on screen, but in the movie, even be 2 years younger than that. So when he was actually 15 and in high school, the movie was saying that studio wise, he was 8 years old. I believe that they had him like a 4 or 5 year age shift, but not that big. So that's the only thing. I wish that the character who was playing Michael Jackson as a young youth could have grew up into a teenage years, but they kind of went from him straight into adulthood Michael with Jaffar Jackson. Jaffar Jackson is Jermaine Jackson's son, I believe it is. He did an awesome fucking job. There was key points in the movie that I looked at him and I said, that boy looked like Jermaine right there. But then there were some points in that movie, boy, he captured the shit out of Michael Jackson. He had the voice down. He was able to grasp a lot of his stage performance. He wasn't Michael Jackson. Of course he wasn't. He's not Michael Jackson. He's Jaffar. But he did a damn good job. You know how we used to root on a lot of Michael Jackson impersonators back in the day? He would have been one of the people that I would have been cheering for. My little cousin, Fat Cat, she was a girl. But Fat Cat was one of the top Michael Jackson performers in the United States. She's won so many awards for her competitions and things like that. Once she got older, she stopped performing as him. But yeah, my girl was Michael Jackson a lot of her life. Hey, Fat Cat. I don't even know if she watched the channel, but hey, girl. Anywho, Jaffar did a damn good job. The Jackson boys who played Marlon, Tito, Randy, and Jermaine, I thought some of those were Jackson kids. They looked at so much like the real entertainers. They did a good job. But going back a little bit to the young man who played young Michael Jackson, I don't know, but I wonder if that is his voice. Because it wasn't Michael Jackson's voice. It was definitely someone singing version of Michael. And that little boy, if that's his voice, that little boy can sing his ass off. I can't wait to see him develop into a full, more rounder actor and get more gigs. He was doing the damn thing. He was playing his little MJ. You go head on, boy. And he embodied Michael Jackson as well. So the movie starts off. We started 2300 Jackson Street. We started 2300 Jackson Street. We start with, Joe making them work hard. Another thing that kind of threw me a little bit because, Tito and Jermaine are two of the main people, I believe, who decided to put together this project. They focused a lot on the abuse that Joe doled out to Michael. And it was my understanding growing up that Joe abused all those kids. I think everybody except for Janet was my understanding. I could be wrong. So when they did show that he was being overly harsh, physically abusive, they mainly focused on what he did to Michael. Because again, this is Michael's story. It's not the Jackson 5 story. If you want to see the Jackson 5 story, watch the other movie. Okay? Watch the other movie. The one with Angela. Okay? But, so the amount of abuse that they showed us was enough for me. It really set the stage on how much abuse was going on in that family, how controlling Joe Jackson was, in that family. One thing that I was just talking to my daughter about that I never understood to this day, I don't understand, is how much people praise Katherine Jackson. I have never felt the way that the average fan feels about Katherine Jackson because I felt as a parent, she did not protect them as children. This movie ends when Michael's almost 30. 1998? 88? Yeah. And it wasn't until that time that she started being more vocal towards Joe, more on Michael's side. We showed that she had a bond with him. She watched movies with him, silent movies. Y'all know Michael Jackson loves silent movies. Watch silent movies, watch the Three Stooges with him, eat ice cream, But as far as the protection of those children from the abuse from their father, Katherine didn't do shit for me at all. So I don't see why people give her the amount of praise they do other than the fact that she's their mother. And they didn't give her as much praise and accolades in this movie either. So I appreciated that. I didn't want them to like overstate her presence as far as like being this super mom that the fans make her out to be. Because Joe honestly was truly responsible for catapulting all of his kids' career, including Janet's, Reeby's, all of them. He was the driving force. He drove a little bit too fucking hard, but he was the driving force behind their success, or behind at least catapulting them into success. The boys were talented themselves. They were the success. But I do like the fact, so they kind of like, they breezed through the first few years, of him being with the Jackson 5 and how Motown picked him up. They didn't focus too much on Joe's affairs, but they did imply he had an affair with Susan DePass. So they implied that and they left that alone. They didn't harp too much on that. I think they gave right enough. They gave enough of the movie to show a more personal side to Michael Jackson. They gave enough of the movie to say this child missed out on his childhood and he was trying to hold on to it so dearly. And a lot of the things that he did throughout this movie was him connecting with that childhood. He missed out on having the friendships growing up that the average children would have. So he surrounded himself by other children to capture those relationships. He would hang out at the children's ward of the burn centers and things like that. He would hang out in the cancer ward with the children, things like that nature. He would go to toy stores and sign autographs kids. He wanted to have that connection that he couldn't have growing up. It also highlighted the fact that his desire to be free, his love for Peter Pan and what that represented for him. And not even when he got free, so to speak, from his contract with Joe, he was still bound by his father's presence. And this movie takes us to a point where he finally was able to walk away from that. One other thing they didn't mention, because they made it seem like Michael was all about touring, unless it had to be for Joe. Michael Jackson hated touring. He said that in so many different interviews that I could remember seeing growing up. He did not like touring at all. But he did want to reach the world. He did want to heal the world. And that's pretty much where the movie ends, is with him really saying, this is now my time to go out there and be the shining light to everybody, and heal the world. Okay, so that's pretty much where the movie ends there. And I like that. I like that they didn't dive too much into what was going on with him outside. This was an internal journey of Michael Jackson. And I love the fact that even during this journey, his brothers were still present to help see it, because they all resided together for the most part. And so the points of that story they're able to tell was the sides that all made us as fans fall in love with him. A couple shout outs that I loved about the movie. I love the fact that they hinted that Michael Jackson is the shit, but Michael also saw Prince as the shit too. Because there was one point in the movie where he was talking about how he wanted to let God bless him with the musical talent or the musical lyrics or the songs that he's looking for. Because if he didn't soak up and meditate on that or manifest it, then he knew God was going to give those songs to Prince. So you could that just shows they had this a little musical talent rivalry between one another, but it's still there was respect there as who they were as artists. I love that moment because y'all know Prince is one of my favorite. Prince and Tupac, they hinted on the fact of his involvement with helping heal the gang violence in LA. Prince hung with the gangsters and the thugs. You know what I'm saying? He was out there with NWA. He was out there with Pac, he would be in the studio with Biggie and shit like that. Mike was that dude. He was that dude. He was well protected and he was that dude. It actually touched on his relationship he had with his bodyguard. I love that. He was kind of like the father that Michael didn't have. It hinted towards his drug abuse or his drug addiction. It basically hinted towards how it all began, how it all started. Like I say, and with the nose, prosthetic nose that I said I didn't like the way that it looked, the idea of how it all came about or why he started to alter his face. And I believe they showed at least a couple times that this situation happened. One, they kind of like really leaned into the story itself, and the other one, they just kind of showed you just by showing the tape on his face where they would like put on his face after surgery. They just showed that for a brief moment. Or they showed him like try to put makeup on to cover the scars and stuff like that. Also to cover the vitiligo. They dressed that a little bit into the movie as well. So I do like that they didn't pound it. They didn't pound into the story. I don't think that they purposely left out details to try to give you a different perception. They wanted to tell the story to me, the personal story of Michael Jackson, as far as how the fans viewed him as well. This is what was going on in his life, and this is how the fans were viewing him. I mean, they even went into how he got Bubbles' child. If you know, you know. If you don't know who Bubbles is, then you don't know him, MJ. Okay, they even talked about how he got the Bubbles, how he got the llama, how he had Giraffe, his talk about Never Neverland, all of that. They did one award show where they showed a character that should have been Webster, so it kind of hinted towards his relationship towards Webster. It was another character they showed like a hint of. One of my friends, an old poetry friend, he was playing Quincy Jones. Yeah, he played Quincy Jones in the movie. He was also in Insecure, played Nathan. Yeah, he's an old poetry friend. I know he probably don't remember me. I know we still connected on Instagram, but it's been over a decade since we've actually seen each other, had a conversation with each other, and we weren't like hang out buddy friends. We were friends on the poetry scene. He was in the movie. Coleman Domingo played Joe Jackson. Nia Long played Kate Jackson. Mike Myers was in the movie. He was the one over CBS. Can't remember the other daggone actor. He was the one who was ended up being his lawyer. But yeah, I enjoyed the movie. I implore everybody to go see it. I also implore you, don't be so stiff in the pants. This MJ. If MJ don't make you move, that was the only other thing. Well, only other thing about moving. At the very last concert, we saw the impact. The very last concert we saw on the movie, we saw the impact that he had on the crowds, where you saw people pass down, falling out. That started way earlier in his career. And I kind of wish they would have hinted towards that. Because, I mean, they would take people out there on stretchers. On stretchers. Like, I, as a child, was not allowed to go see Michael Jackson simply because of the possibility that I may get hurt and lose my life. People were getting trampled at his concerts. The boy was bad. Michael Jackson came out on stage. One was put down. I don't know why I keep thinking it was 17 minutes, but somebody said it was only 5. Maybe it felt like 17 minutes. And he just stood there, wind blowing, sweating, just breathing, soaking it all in. Look at this scanning the crowd. And motherfuckers was losing their damn mind. Do you hear me? He hadn't said a word. And they was losing their fucking minds. That's how impactful it was. And they didn't really touch on that much until the end. We saw the crowds of people like hounding around him throughout the movie as fans. But the way that people, lose their faculties over Michael Jackson, that wasn't really shown as much until like the very end of the movie. After the movie is over, sit through it, y'all. You're going to get at least 5 or 6 good Michael Jackson songs at the end of the movie. Me, my daughter, and the other 5 people that's right next to us, we stayed into the screen went black. We stayed. We was in there. We was in there. Okay. They went through his Off the Wall. They went through his Thriller. They went through his I'm Bad. Okay, you feel me? They even showed some of the making of the Thriller idea. One of the things that I did notice too, when they talked about Thriller, and they was talking about how he wanted to be in movies and direct movies and things like that, that was a conversation, if I'm not mistaken, that was had way before the Thriller movie. because he had already did The Wiz. So this was an idea that was bubbling in him. But again, I believe Dinah Ross didn't sign off on the movie. That's why The Wiz wasn't even mentioned. Something else. The MTV spot, when they talked about getting his videos on MTV, if I'm not mistaken, he did Say with Paul McCartney first. And that was released. That was the release for the Thriller album. And it wasn't on the Thriller album, if I'm not mistaken. But, you know, they had it out for that Billie Jean is what catapulted him into the video space that was outside of BET. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, I think it was a good movie. I recommend go seeing it. I give it a 8 out of 10. I do. And I'll go see it again. And by the time I come see it again, it probably rank up there a little bit higher for me. See y'all in the next one. Peace.